Hey, Theory 4. I want to talk to you a little bit today about some other chord sonorities and also touch a bit on 20th century rhythm. So we talked about extended tertian chords, but also chords began to be built on intervals other than the third. One such interval is the second, and chords built upon a second tend to form what we call a tone cluster. It can be major seconds, minor seconds, or combinations. But the underlying principle is that the harmony is based upon a stack of seconds. This is sometimes also called secundal harmony, S-E-C-U-N-D-A-L, secundal. And sometimes composers have experimented with kind of wild techniques, like having the pianist depress as many keys with their forearm as they can. And so on. Part of the experimentation that we find in the 20th century. Other chord structures are quartal harmonies, that is, they're built on fourths. So, for example, if we have a fourth and add another and another, we have chords that are built on the interval of the fourth. Now, by itself, the fourth is generally considered to be a consonant interval, but when you start stacking them together, it becomes dissonant. A very important Russian composer named Alexander Scriabin created a chord that he called his mystic chord that's built on fourths. I encourage you to look up Scriabin and read about him. He was a fascinating guy. His last work, which was never completed, was called Mysterium, and it was to be performed in the Himalayan mountains at the end of the world. Very interesting and fascinating individual. Okay. Planing. Let's talk just a bit about planing. Again, this is associated oftentimes with Impressionism. The other word that goes hand in hand with it is parallelism. So you remember your parallel fifths that you weren't supposed to write. Well, in planing, we use parallel octaves, parallel fifths, parallel fourths, thirds, anything you want. So for example, if I do something like this, and I'm using chords that move each note the same interval, I wind up with a parallel texture called planing. Claude Debussy wrote a famous piece called The Engulfed Cathedral that I, again, would suggest that you listen to. I think we've talked about it. That is a good example of that. Now, as far as rhythm and meter goes, several things happen in the 20th century. One is the experimentation of polymeters, meaning more than 1 meter at a time. Polytempos, which means more than one tempo at a time, and mixed meter, which means basically the time signature changes very frequently, every 1 to 3 measures or so, so that you don't have a sense of a steady reoccurring pulse. So polymeter, more than 1 meter at a time, well, in a sense, our good old hemiola or hemiola is an example of that. I'm playing threes with my left hand, twos with my right. So 3 against 2 would be a polymeter. Of course, this can get a whole lot more complex. We can have 5s against 7s, 3s against 7s, all sorts of unusual combinations. Stravinsky's Petrushka, for example, opens with a famous example of a polymeter where the underlying time signature is 3/4, but the melody consists of groups of 7s. Petrushka, might check it out. Now, as far as a mixed meter goes, here we have the example in my handout here that I gave you. 4/4 time, followed by 2/4, followed by 6/8, followed by 3/4. So if I play those all together, every measure in this case has a different metric division. The hemiola that we talk about is basically, again, a type of mixed meter that alternates between 3s and 3s and 2s and 2s. Now there's different types of hemiolas. The one I played for you, first of all, was a vertical hemiola, meaning that the 3s were in my left hand and the 2s were in my right. But a horizontal hemiola is when the meter changes in such a way that one measure will feel, for example, that it's in 6/8 time, and another will feel like it's in 3/4 time. So here's an example. One and a 2 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and a 2 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2. So in this case we have sort of a 6/8, which has a duple feel, 1 and a 2, to a 3/4, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now asymmetric meter is another, and this is where the meter can be divided into more than one unit. Perfect example is 5/4 time. So 5/4 time, if you have ever heard a famous piece called Take 5, let's see if I can remember how it starts. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. Hard to count and play that at the same time. But that would be an asymmetric meter of 3 plus 2. You could also have 2 plus 3. Although that's not how the piece goes. Sometimes this is also called additive meter because we're adding rhythmic components together. One of my favorite examples of this, big surprise here, is a Beatles song called Here Comes the Sun. It's on the Abbey Road album. It's a George Harrison composition. I'm sure you've heard it. But we're going along, you know, da 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 da, dee 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 dee, da da da, dee dee dee. Doing the best I can here. But then we get to the part where it goes, sun, 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 here it comes. Ba-da-da, 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 ba-ba-bum. So we've been in 4/4 time. Syncopated, but the basic pulse is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we get to this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. So basically, you can look at it different ways. Most people think of this as 3 measures of 3/8 followed by a measure of 2/8. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Now later on in the same song, George Harrison makes that a little bit different by going 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1. Great example of an additive or an asymmetrical meter. There are other things that we can talk about, but this will be enough for our purposes right now. And as always, if you have questions, give me a call, give me a text, and we'll be in touch.